Hello, I am Firushan. Welcome to the last session of Allied Rakkavetibiya webinar series. Today's topic is insurance during time of crisis, focusing on cybersecurity. Over the next few minutes, we will be exploring the digital risks associated with businesses and ways to steer clear of possible threats and how to best approach these risks. Now, let's meet our amazing panel for today. On my left, first is Ahmad Shabik, who is the general manager at Allied Insurance Company, and next is Hood Ali, who is the information systems manager of Allied Insurance. Next is our guest panelist joining us, Nail Abdurrahman, partner at Intelia. Good to have you all with us. We have a lot to talk about. I'm sure the participants will have their own questions along the way. So we would like to invite you to put them on chat box, and we will get to as many questions as possible during the Q&A session. All right, let's get started. Before we approach to the topic of insurance, first let's identify the main idea behind cybersecurity. Nail, what is considered as digital risks in the business world?
Thank you very much for having me, Firshan. So when we are talking about businesses and the digital risk to the businesses, we are mostly talking about the risk to the business in terms of their digital assets. So when we say that, we're mostly talking about both the hardware as well as the data that the business is holding, whether it is information related to the business itself in terms of customer KYC, various sensitive information such as credit card information and so forth, or internal documents related to the day-to-day operations of the business. But it also refers to third-party data that the business might be holding. For example, if the business is a software as a service provider or similar. So we're talking about these assets in terms of their integrity, their security, as well as the customer's privacy. So in that regard, there is a considerable risk surface, as we call it, starting all the way from the users, both internal and external users. Internal users in the sense the users within the organization who have access to the internal network and infrastructure of the organization. We're talking about emails, various document portals, the physical hardware itself, and so forth. And external users, we mean customers who are accessing or communicating to the business through either email or various portals and websites and so forth that are exposed to the outside world. So among these, you may encounter both malicious and non-malicious actors, as we call them. So malicious actors who are deliberately trying to cause harm, and non-malicious actors who are not necessarily trying to harm the business, but might inadvertently do it accidentally or otherwise by performing actions that are not meant to be performed uh, or some such. Um, so some of the harm that can be caused include uh, integrity issues where they submit data that is wrong or incorrect, or um, they might accidentally, like in terms of internal users, they might accidentally download some malware onto the internal network. For example, ransomware, which might lead to loss of data and the business getting ultimately held hostage, the data being held hostage to an unknown attacker. And these attacks are very, very difficult to rectify once they happen. Um, so these things can depending on the situation, be very severe or minor. Uh, so it's anybody's guess as to how it can go. So things like bad configuration, incorrectly configured privileges for the users can cause damages, uh, whether they're large or small. That can determine how that's going to end up. So just to go from here, these damages can have consequences that are beyond the loss of data as well, in terms of bad PR, loss of trust. So it has a very big impact on the company's public outlook, which obviously is going to affect the business's performance. As well as it can have legal consequences as well. For example, even though we are talking about the Maldivian jurisdiction here, um, uh, legal mechanisms such as the GDPR, which relates to information stored on citizens of the European Union, for example, um, can come into play if there are breaches or misappropriation or misuse of data or information, which can lead to very severe fines, even if you are a Maldivian company. So, because we are party to certain conventions, these things can apply to us as well. So, it's very important to have a primary focus on these digital surfaces, especially in this age of digitization and digitalization. So it can't be like a secondary concern for any business these days, because almost all businesses, at the very least, have an exposed email operation going on. So these things need to be seriously considered for any business. So the risk is very real, and depending on the operations, the severity of it can vary, but the risk exists for pretty much any business that operate online or offline these days. So, so it's very important to be prepared. So yeah, I'll conclude my comment on that at this stage and hand it over to Firshan.
Thank you, Nile. That was a very well rounded answer. Clearly, we could all use some insight on the ways to which we could overcome the risks Nile had just mentioned. Hood, can you explain how a business could take safety measures regarding these risks?
Thank you, Firsha. As Niall mentioned, such attacks and events are a serious threat to any business, big or small. Despite this increased risk, a lot of businesses still have no plan to mitigate such attacks. It is important to be ready before an incident occurs and not think that this will not happen to us. Businesses can make sure this is done by doing a periodical assessment of their systems, their networks, hardware, and data. One way to do this is to do penetration testing and data integrity checks on systems by a third party. This will help identify any gap in security weaknesses in the systems. Because an incident like data breach requires a rapid response, an incident response plan should be developed prior to the time of an actual breach. Developing a thorough and thoughtful incident response plan creates the ability to respond to such events, and employing the appropriate personnel with appropriate experience is also very important. An incident response plan should be designed to address any type of security incident, including both internal incidents and external incidents, such as theft of information or ransomware attacks that block use of systems. There are many points to be aware while preparing an incident response plans. This includes things like identification of all team members and their roles, team members being ready to respond, an outline of all steps to be taken at each stage of the incident response process, guidelines for external and internal information sharing in handling an incident response. This is to keep clients and customers updated during such incidents. Um, we need to keep these points in mind when preparing for such incidents. Always be prepared and be prepared to invest in the security of your systems, the security of your business and customers' data. I hope I covered most important points. Thank you. Hirshan, over to you.
Thank you, Hood. Like Hood mentioned, it's always best to be prepared beforehand, before disaster strikes. What better than insurance for prayer protection, right? I would like to address my next question to Shabik. Shabik, how does insurance help in overcoming such cyber risks?
Thank you, Firsan. Yeah, it's a very good question. Actually, there is nothing other than insurance during any kind of crisis, whether it is cyber or any other. So as Nail mentioned, there are various risks involved in cyber security, and Hood has mentioned various ways we can rectify and be prevent, as he said, be prepared. So even though we all are well prepared, there are still chances that it can go wrong. So insurance is come into picture when there is a disaster or there is a big incident. So from insurance side, we can address various parts of the we call crisis. For example, let's say, depending on the situation, something like a very normal data breach incident. It involves investigation. So definitely that we can take care. And also civil damages that we can take care of that. I think before I proceed, it's better to tell you what is covered under this cyber insurance. Mainly, like other insurance, we have two parts of or two coverage. One is damages to first party. First party is we call your business asset. So any damage or loss to your digital asset, as Nail mentioned, digital data, we call it, or it may be data or software. So any damages to your digital asset is covered under cyber insurance. And of course, any business loss related to that is again we can cover under insurance. And there is sometimes incidents where the cyber extortions, where a third party threaten to damage your database or maybe release your data if you don't pay a certain amount to them, just like kidnapping. So these things we can cover under cyber insurance as well. And if something happens, the most important thing is to notify the customer about the incident. So it also involves cost. If you have this cyber insurance, it is covered under cyber insurance. That cost involving to notify the customer about the incident and make them informed. And of course, if there is any reputational damage because of the data breach or security issues, so these are again covered under insurance. And of course, if there is data theft, so just to write that or rewrite that data it involves again a huge cost that can also be covered under cyber insurance. And if there is any theft of money, so here we are not talking about just under normal money. So any money lost during your digital transaction or electronic transaction is taken care of under cyber insurance. Likewise, under third-party cyber insurance, that is where because of your negligence or accidental incident, some other parties, data is lost, or is there any damage to their property, so you are liable. So as Nail mentioned, that there is a EU regulation, data protection regulation, which says any country, which any business which holds any personal data of EU citizens can be fined up to 30 million euros. So it means business in Maldives or any other country are still can be affected by this regulation. So if there is any kind of regulatory damages or defense cost, or the investigation related to that is covered under third-party cyber insurance. So these are the areas where insurance can be beneficial to run your business during crisis like this. So even though you have all the precautions taken, still there are chances that these incidents may happen. So we have seen this in US, we have seen this in UK, and all over the world, whether small or big, still this is happening to the business. So it's better to have proper insurance taken along with other security measures.
Thank you, Shabik. That sums up the discussion portion for today. Next, we will move on to the Q&A part. We have received only one question, so I believe our panelists have done an excellent job in explaining the area of focus in the given time. Our webinar participants would like to inquire more about the insurance segment. I think Shabik can take this one, right? The question is, what does insurance actually cover in a cyber attack?
Yeah, so as I said, insurance, cyber insurance is a wide cover. So it's all depending on the nature of your business and the activity you do. So depending on, we have a very wide cover of insurance solution for that. I think it's better just, I'll just give you one simple scenario where the insurance or this cost may involve. For example, let's say your employee leave his laptop somewhere and lost, and it has certain customer information. So just to rectify that or get those stolen laptop or the data in it, roughly it cost around $201 per record. So imagine if you have that laptop stolen, so indirectly there are costs involved, like the time and effort you put to rectify that breach, and also forensic or legal activities you have to go through. And of course, because of that, you will get the negative publicity and loss of profit. Just to address that, so you need to have a proper insurance cover. So the simple Though the simplified way of taking the insurance is just to discuss with your underwriter about your business activities and get one of these cover. For example, there are cover for denial of service. For example, unable to access to your website. So those are cover for that. And also the most common thing is unauthorized access to your database or tampering with data. For that also there is a certain insurance you can cover under cyber insurance. Of course, disclosure of confidential data and crisis management. I think this is the most important thing. If something happens, so you must be able to manage that situation smoothly. If you have proper insurance, it will support to deal with those kind of crisis management. And of course, business interruption are related to any cyber attack. And the most expensive one is to restore that system or your data up to date because of the incident. So these are the various covers you can buy as cybersecurity insurance.
Thank you, Shabik. Now we have come to the end of the session. I hope we were able to give you all some useful information on the need for insurance during times of crisis and how it may benefit your businesses. Have a good day. Thank you for being with us.